This is a production of WKNO Memphis. Production funding for Sports Files is made possible in part by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Today on Sports Files, we dust off the roundtable and break down the upcoming season for the Memphis Grizzlies. The Grizzlies close out their 8-game preseason schedule tonight as they host the Toronto Raptors. And while winning is always nice, the goal for Coach Lionel Hollins and his team this preseason has been integrating the team's newest members with the core players, who have been the major reason for the team's success over the last several campaigns. The Grizzlies will open the regular season next Wednesday night in Los Angeles against the team that eliminated them from the postseason last year, the Clippers, in a disappointing 7th-game loss at FedEx Forum. The Grizzlies are in the midst of changing ownership, but the franchise has once again made a considerable financial commitment for this season and the immediate future by signing Zach Randolph, Rudy Gay, Marc Gasol, and Mike Conley to long-term deals. They have also re-signed crucial role players Darrell Arthur and Maurice Spates, added free agent guard Jared Bayless, and traded for shooter Wayne Ellington. Will the Grizzlies be back in the playoff mix? And if so, can they make a serious run in the postseason? And how improved are some of the teams in the West who failed to make the playoffs last season? I have assembled a media roundtable with 3 guys whose jobs center on covering the Grizzlies. They may not be able to definitively answer those questions today, but will certainly get their best shot. A Grizzlies season preview is next. All right, let's meet the panel. Let's start with the commercial appeal beat writer for the Grizzlies, and that is Ron Tillery, who also moonlights a few days a week as host of Sports Time on Sports 56 and FM 87.7. Welcome, Ron.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Also, sideline reporter for the Grizzlies telecast, co-host of the Fish and Stats Show on Sports 56 and FM 87.7, Rob Fisher.
Greg, good to see you.
Good to see you too, Rob. And the co-owner and lead writer of the Grizzlies blog, 3 Shades of Blue, Chip Crane. Hey, Chip.
Hey, Greg. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you guys for being here today. Obviously, there's big news going on in New York as we tape the show, as we speak, with the NBA Board of Governors meeting, where it seems like it's going to be a mere formality that the Robert Pera Group will become the new owners of the Grizzlies from Michael Heisley. Let's assume that happens. I think it's a good assumption. What does the change in ownership mean? And again, this is a lot of speculation, guys, because nobody here has met Robert Pera. Ron, let me start with you. What do you think new ownership means for the Grizzlies?
Well, you're right. From a basketball standpoint, we really just don't know. It would be pure speculation because we don't know Robert Pera's style. We're not exactly sure who he's going to entrust to make basketball decisions. What it will mean immediately is a better relationship with the business community. You saw it with re-engaging local guys like Staley Cates and Pitt Hyde and now some other prominent business leaders. And, you know, you got Penny and Justin Timberlake, a little star power. So I just think you're going to see more of a warm and fuzzy ownership relationship than you've seen over the last decade with Mike Heisley.
Fish, I would imagine that we're not going to see too many changes, if any, the first year. But in time, I would guess that Robert Pera and his associates will decipher everything about this organization and make changes if needed.
Well, when new owners come in, they generally want their own people. With the timing of it being, you know, a week before the season getting underway, and when it's finally official, probably in another week, yeah, it's going to be tough to just step in. I mean, you don't want to show up at the arena on opening night and say, "Where's the light switch?" We don't know where that is. So I would expect a transition period for some. Like Ron said, to me, I think the positives are the deal got done. When Michael Heisley made it very clear he wanted to sell the team and Robert Pera became a potential buyer, I think that was a positive, and you wanted it to get done because Michael wants to sell the team. And if this deal didn't go through, well, what's next? What does he resort to? Where's the price go? Does he just throw it away? You don't know what the future would have held. So I like that happened. I like that the local ownership is involved. I like that the fan base now has kind of calmed down a little bit as far as the teams leaving and panicking about that. That's not going to happen. But everything in the future, we don't know. How hands-on will he be? How visible will he be at the arena? We don't know those things because he's got a pretty big business to take care of alongside the Memphis Grizzlies. So You hope that it's great. You hope it's a great relationship, and I think you at least are positive about it because of the local inclusion with this ownership group.
And Chip, it's very understandable when somebody takes over a company, whether it be a basketball team or any business, that they're going to want to bring their people in, they're going to want to make changes. But certainly a lot of people now around the Memphis community are worried because Chris Wallace has done such a nice job as the general manager. Does not mean he's out, does not mean he'll be reassigned, but that could possibly happen.
Well, definitely. I mean, if I was going to spend $350 million, I'd like to have somebody I trusted on top of that, making sure that day-to-day is being watched. And there are a lot of people in this ownership group that do know a lot about basketball. So I think it's obviously a concern, but at the same time, Pera's a good businessman, and you're not going to get rid of somebody who's been so vital to this community just because you don't know him well. He'll make the attempt to get to know Chris. They'll see where they agree and where they disagree. And if it's possible, I think he'll want to keep a person like Chris in place. But money talks, and it's your money. You want to have a little better say.
Well, speaking of money and money talks, the Grizzlies went out during the offseason. They made sure the core players were here, and they're going to be here for quite some time. They went out. They filled some holes that were very obvious for this team. With that said, Ron, is this the best assembled Grizzlies talent in the history of this organization?
Well, we've heard that from outgoing owner Michael Heisley, and Chris Wallace spoke to that, saying that this is the best roster they've had to start a season. It certainly gives you the most optimism for what's possible in terms of making some real noise in the Western Conference. They're deep, and I think they're balanced at every position. But the real issue here for this team is health. When the Grizzlies are healthy, they are a pretty good basketball team, and you have to be encouraged by that. And then you also look at the roster and how it's made up of young guys in their prime. You know, Zach and Tony are 30, 31, but you look at Rudy, Mark, Mike Conley, these guys are in their prime, and they're playing the best basketball of their lives.
Fish, do you think it was a smart move to retain Gasol, Conley, Gay, and Zebo long term?
Absolutely. I think continuity is important in any sport, and having the same coaching staff as well, and Lionel now being around for another season. I think all of that's important on building a franchise, especially when you don't have the star power, the Kevin Durant or the Kobe Bryant. You have to create a niche, and the Grizzlies certainly have created a niche with their play inside. And while that was good for a couple of years and got them far for a couple of years, we saw that there were a couple of holes, and I think they've addressed them. Backup point guard situation was awful a year ago. Mm-hmm. They've greatly improved at that position. Getting some shooting, I think, was good in Wayne Ellington, and also what's Josh Selby going to do with, and essentially what's his rookie season? After last year being out of position and coming off the lockout. But Ron's right. I mean, it comes down to health, because this team has had two of their biggest stars go down the last 2 years, and they've been able to overcome it. They stay healthy with the depth that they have. They not only have that niche now that sets them apart from a lot of other teams, but the other thing they have is when teams want to go small, teams want to go big, they can match that now at every position. And that's something they haven't had in the past.
Let me step back for a second and go back to last season. Chip, let me start with you. Was it a success? Was it a disappointment? Was it somewhere in the middle, the end result for the Grizzlies last season?
The end result was a disappointment. The season was a success. You had probably the best, statistically wise, winning year we've ever had. And to take a team to Game 7 in the playoffs just 2 or 3 years ago was unthinkable. We would never do that. We had never won a game. So in the big picture, yeah, it was a success. But you lose Game 7 at home, and it's not even that close of a competitive game. Mm-hmm. That's going to put a bad taste in your mouth, and that's what I think most people still feel.
Do you feel, Ron, that they did enough in the offseason, filling those holes, that they could take another step forward like they did 2 seasons ago when they went 7 games and nearly made the Western Conference Finals? Can they get back to that point?
Oh, absolutely. I think they did enough, because the first thing you do is not panic.
Right.
And this roster didn't need an overhaul. It just needed a couple tweaks. And as Fish said, fill some gaps. Jared Bayless is going to be an upgrade over O.J. Mayo, simply because he can handle the basketball. He's got a scoring mentality, and he understands his role. He's been coming off the bench his entire NBA career, so that's not going to be a mental block for him. Wayne Ellington, sometimes change of scenery helps, and sometimes you get a guy at the right time, and we've seen that here time and time again. So I don't think it's unreasonable to think that a guy like Ellington could break out. We've seen it with Mo Spates. We've seen it with Tony Allen. We've seen it with, Zach becoming an all-star here and Mark becoming an all-star here. And you can't say enough about Mike Conley. So I absolutely think they did enough. And again, you're looking at a very deep team and a very versatile team. I think that was a great point by Fish, because not only can they beat you up inside, but they can play fast, they can play small. Lionel Hollins is very happy, I can tell you that.
He has a lot of options, right?
Oh, yeah, a lot of options.
You mentioned injuries, and certainly that's the key for every team. In every sport is injury, staying healthy. With that said, Rob, let me ask you about Z-Bo. We've seen him in a couple of preseason games. Looks to be pretty solid, looks to be back to his old self. Do you expect Z-Bo to be back to where he was, or will he ever be back to that Z-Bo we saw a couple of years ago, the all-star Z-Bo?
Well, that was a great Z-Bo. Yeah, I guess so. I mean, he says he's healthy. He looks great. The things that I've noticed so far in practice and in these preseason games, that quick release when he gets the rebound and getting the ball back in the basket and being around the basket. And, with a normal schedule now, not having to rush anything, I think it will help him. And yeah, I do expect that. With the team around him better, yeah, I think he can get back to that form. He might not put up the same numbers, but I think it's because you have other guys now that'll be able to contribute as well. But I think he'll play that same way. The thing about this team this year that we haven't seen before, and Chip, you mentioned the disappointment. When has this team gone into a season disappointed how the previous season ended? I mean,
right.
Now you're losing in the playoffs, and now it's hungry. It's hungry to get back. They're ticked off about how it finished last year, and it's, hey, we tasted it, and then last year we made a step up, but we blew it in the postseason. Now we got to beat that. I mean, there's a chip on this team's shoulder this year, and it's not because nobody respects them anymore, which it used to be.
Right.
Now it's because we let ourselves down, and now we got to get back.
And the expectations have absolutely changed when you consider last year the Grizzlies integrated new players in Dante Cunningham and Mo Spates. They lost their heart and soul and their beast in Zach Randolph, and people still expected them to finish the way they finished in the playoff standings. I mean, it was a remarkable job by the coaching staff, but the expectations are very high now.
Going into last season, there was the question that everybody brought up, especially the fans: can Z-Bo and Rudy Gay coexist? They were coming off the year where Gay went down and Z-Bo did his thing, and then Z-Bo starts last year and he gets hurt. Is there enough sample size to say definitively these two work together really well and it's a success? Chip, let me start with you.
Well, I think if you look at when this starting five went together, they started off, they won 10 of 11 games before Rudy got hurt against Philadelphia. So the sample size is small, but you can see the results. They were playing the best basketball I've ever seen Memphis put on the court when they had everyone together. When Rudy went down, they switched to the style and they moved to a more power game. When Zach went down, they went more back to perimeter and in and out game. What are we going to have this year? I think we have options in any respect, like Rob said, that we can actually blossom together. But chemistry is always an issue, even when you bring back teams. Chemistry is going to be an issue, and how well this team matches this year is going to go a long way to determining how far the team can go. And it's going to be coming down to Rudy and Zach and how they play together.
Well, Z-Bo was an all-star 2 years ago, as you mentioned. Last year, Marc Gasol. Can Rudy ever be at that level?
Well, obviously, he's an extremely gifted guy, and there are a lot of superstars at that position. So it's going to be tough to break through, but that's not to say that he could never get there. Mm-hmm. And back to the Rudy Zach thing, I just thought that whole argument was ridiculous because where was the sample size to prove that they could play together?
Exactly.
That's the first thing I thought about. And we have the fortune of being in practice, and you see these guys work. They're professionals. They want to win. They don't have to hang out with each other on the court, but they're trying very hard to make it work. I'm sorry, they don't have to hang out with each other off the court, but they're trying very hard to make it work on the court. And I think the chemistry is there.
All right, before we get into predictions and what you guys expect to see from the team on the court this season, let's just talk about the West. Fish, there's been some teams that certainly improved their stock. The Lakers, who are already good, go out and get Dwight Howard and Steve Nash. Other teams getting older by the minute. How do you see the West? Give us a couple of teams maybe you think are going forward that will be competing with the Grizzlies for the postseason, and a couple that maybe took a step backwards.
Well, there are questions with every team, but health, as we mentioned with the Grizzlies, is always a huge concern going into this year, and that's the case with everybody. If the Lakers, one of their 3 big players or 4 big players, I guess, goes down, well, their depth is terrible, and they might slide. The Clippers have added a lot of pieces. Will all those pieces work together? And they've had a couple of guys that have been banged up. Billups still not back. Chris Paul's been banged up a lot. Blake Griffin's been banged up a lot. Lamar Odom's not in shape. And can they work together? Vinny Del Negro, getting them together is going to be interesting to watch as the season goes on. You think they've improved. Oklahoma City's still young. They're still going to be there near the top, if not at the top. San Antonio, one of these years, they're going to get old. I'm not counting on it till it happens,
right.
But one of these years it's going to happen. And, but they've remained healthy and they continue to win games. So I think at the top, it's still fine. Everything after that will be interesting. What does George Karl do now with the Denver team, a Denver team that he really likes? How much better can they be? They're a team I think to watch out for. But Portland, I'm not so sure about Portland, Minnesota, Golden State. And I think you put Dallas in that mix as well. I think there are a lot of teams in the West that are going to be in that race for the 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 spot, and it's going to be pretty close throughout the year. I think the first 5 are pretty set, and that includes the Grizzlies.
Chip, what do you think about the West?
I'd agree. The top 5, I don't expect to see any change. The order may change, but their top 5 teams are going to be the same top 5 teams. I think Denver's solidly the favorite to be 6. And then 7 through 12 is anybody's guess. You can have any number of teams really make a run up. I think as I talked about earlier off camera, the Southwest Division's in play for the first time since we've been here, where the Grizzlies are actually a chance to win a division. And I think instead of looking at playoff situations, we should be looking at division situations for this year and see if we can win a division for the first time. That in itself could be a great accomplishment. And that's what I'm looking for, is how do we stack up in our own division. For the first time, I think it's in play.
Ron, have the Clippers, Lakers, Spurs, Thunder separated themselves a little more from the rest of the West, or has it come together and there's more parity?
Well, as Fish pointed out, I think there are tiers, but I just think it's clearly the Lakers and the Thunder. Okay, and that's the top tier.
Okay,
and the Spurs, because they're going to win 55, 60 games. I mean, they always do somehow. From there, I think you have to bunch Denver, Memphis, Clippers. I don't understand where people get this whole thing that Dallas is okay. No, they're not okay.
No.
They did a poor job of trying to get a star to go next to Dirk.
Hard to believe with Cuban at the break.
Yeah.
It's really hard to believe.
And I look at the roster, and I don't see much help for Dirk. And so I think Dallas is going to be one of those teams that fall off. But these guys are right. I mean, you're going to see a real cluster down at the bottom. And one team nobody's really talking about, but coaches are privately talking about, is Sacramento. Coaches really like their roster and how hard they play every night. And so that might be a dark horse team, especially with Houston fading out. Houston in the last couple of years was that team that was always there, 1 or 2 games out of the 8th spot. That could very well be Sacramento this year.
All right, let's go around the horn. Give me your speculation on the Grizzly season, maybe where you think they'll finish, and then a couple other things, and we'll wrap it up. Rob, let me start with you.
Well, I think, I think you start at 50. It's a 50-win team. If healthy, they have the best team that they've had on paper. Lionel Hollins has done a great job getting chemistry together, rebuilding that every year and finding their identity. And if they stay healthy, they'll be able to have an identity throughout an entire season, something they haven't had the last 2 years. So I think 50 plus. It used to be 50 wins was
the magic number, right?
Number to get in the playoffs. Right. And I think right now 50 puts you right in the middle of the playoff race. And, anything above that I think is great. Fall below that might be a little disappointing, but I think at least 50.
All right, Chip, your thoughts?
Well, I have to agree. 50 is a disappointment. If we don't hit 50 wins, it's a disappointing season. I really could see us pushing 55. I think we're going to be right there with San Antonio till the very end. And their age helps us maybe get a few extra games where they're going to have some guys sitting down for a while. I could see us winning the division 55 wins.
All right, Ron?
Oh, I agree with these guys. I think this is a 50-win team. How many they hit exactly, who's to say. But where I disagree is I don't think the division matters. I think what matters is they get home court. I think
it didn't matter last season, though.
Well, yeah, that's true. Yeah, if you get home court, you would like to win Game 7 at home. But I think, you know, if whether they have 50 wins or not, if they can get home court again, I think that would make it a pretty successful regular season.
Who is the most important player on this team for this upcoming season? Fish?
I think Zach Randolph. You know, we talked about him. Is he going to be the guy that he was 2 years ago? I don't know if he needs to be that guy strictly by numbers, but he does need to be that guy. He needs to give him that presence, because when Zebo makes life a lot easier for Marc Gasol, makes life a lot easier for a Wayne Ellington outside, makes life easier for Mike Conley. I think when Zebo is on his game and is playing at the caliber we know he can play, I think it makes everything around him so much better.
Same question, Chip?
Marc Gasol. I think Marc opens up the middle for Zebo to be as effective as he can be as a 6'7", 6'8", power forward guy who plays big but below the rim. You need to have that big body. And behind Zebo, we still have Mo Space. We still have Darrell Arthur. Behind Marc, we go to Hamad Haddadi and possibly Jordan. It's a bigger drop-off behind Marc. He's the guy that's got to be big for us.
All right, Ron?
I'm going to go Rudy Gay for some of the reasons he said. You want to talk about drop-off. You know, Rudy, if he continues to get better defensively, if he can consistently make plays for other people, which I think he's done a great job of this preseason, and also score the basketball like no one else on this team can in terms of getting his own shot from the three-point line all the way down into the paint. I think Rudy Gay having a breakout year is going to mean a lot.
3 different names. That's interesting.
Well,
Zebo,
you could
Gasol.
throw Mike Conley.
I was just
Conley.
going to do that. And Conley, boy, oh boy. Here's a guy who I've been critical of, other people have been critical of around the city in his first few years in the NBA. He had such a breakout year last year, Fish. It was a great, and already just looking in the preseason, the leadership, he feels so confident out there running the show. I would say he may be the most important guy.
And having someone behind him is only going to make him better, because he'll get rest when he does need that rest. That's the thing about this team. It's not one guy. We just mentioned 4 different guys,
right.
and they're all an integral part of this team, and it truly is team. And hey, they know their identity, they know their roles.
I'm going to throw another name out there, Tony Allen. This is a contract year for him. They need Tony to be Tony and not worry about that, trying to do more than he needs to do. He needs to be the guy that we've seen over the last couple of years.
All right, final question for you. Quick answer here. If the Grizzlies lose in the first round again, that is a major disappointment. Fish.
Well, I think you have to look at circumstances.
Do they have to win a series?
Right.
I mean, that's your goal, and that's what you expect this year. I mean, heck, you lose a couple players to injury and you get bounced in the first round, well, then you have to reevaluate it. But I think going in, and if you just say we're going to be a healthy team,
right.
and you know, yeah, first round, you need to win a first round series.
Barring any unforeseen misfortunes.
Right. We'll go back to something we talked about earlier. If we're not out of the first round, Chris Wallace's job's in trouble again.
Ron?
Well, yeah, I think the expectation should be winning a first-round series, but you're right. You got to look at matchups. You might get a bad draw. But I think one of the things that Mike Heisley has done, along with Chris Wallace and Lionel Hollins, because you mentioned Mike Conley. Mike Conley would be out of here if not for Lionel Hollins. And my point is, there's nothing wrong with staying the course, and you're going to have some setbacks along the way, but this team has a window. That's my final point. And don't close it prematurely.
Ron, Chip, Fish, fantastic having you. Thanks so much for being with us. We'll take a break, come back with overtime right after this. A few weeks ago, when Grizzlies general manager Chris Wallace joined me here on Sports Files, I made my prediction of a 48-34 record for the team. With that said, where would that place the Grizzlies in the Western Division? Well, here's how I see it. The Lakers, even with an early chemistry issue or two, simply are stacked with the additions of Dwight Howard and Steve Nash. The Lakers win the West, followed by Oklahoma City, San Antonio, the Clippers, and Denver. The Grizzlies finish in the 6th spot and will begin the playoffs on the road. Portland takes 7th, and Golden State edges out Dallas for the final playoff spot. In the East, the defending league champion Miami Heat will cruise to the top spot. The rest of the division is anyone's guess. I'll take a stab with stable Indiana for 2nd, the aging Boston Celtics 3rd, and the Bulls 4th, which will likely fluctuate depending on when Derrick Rose returns. New York 5th, Philly 6th, Brooklyn 7th, and Milwaukee 8th. And that'll do it for this week's show. Remember, you can drop us a line with an idea for a show topic at WKNO.org. And to see any of our previous Sports Files shows, head to the website and click on KNO Tonight. We'll see you next time.